My name is Kanashe Zarainika and I'm a final year student studying international relations with Africa University. Today I will be taking you through one of my courses, which is Government and Politics in Global Perspectives, and we will be looking at opposition political parties in Southern Africa. So within this, our case study will be South Africa 2013 to 2019, and we need to conceptualize what is an opposition political party, what does it go through, what opposition political parties are in Africa, the role of democracy, the role of the democratization process. Okay, so now we will be looking at opposition political parties in Southern Africa and prospects of taking power. Specifically the case of South Africa from 2013 to 2019. Stay tuned. So, opposition political parties in Southern Africa have had a long history of attempting to gain power, with the most prominent example being South Africa. And since the fall of apartheid in 1994, South African opposition parties have sought to unseat the ANC, which is the African National Congress Party, the ruling party in South Africa. Now, you may ask, what is apartheid? Now, apartheid is Afrikaans for apartness, and this is a policy that governed relations between South Africa's white minority and non-white majority for much of the latter half of the 20th century, sanctioning racial segregation and political and economic discrimination against non-whites. Although the legislation that formed the foundation of apartheid had been repealed by the early 1990s, the social and economic repercussions of the discriminatory policy persisted into the 21st century. Now, over here, we have a picture following the events of an anti-apartheid protest, and we have non-white majority police officers tending to the civilians that had been shot at after they had protested against apartheid. Cool. Now, next thing, what is the ANC? The ANC, also known as the African National Congress, was previously known as SANNC, meaning South African Native National Congress, and this is South Africa's governing party. And it has been in power since the transition to democracy in April 1994. The organization's initial aim was to fight for the rights of the black South Africans, and the organization was renamed ANC in 1923. The organization's initial aim was fighting for the rights of the black South Africans, and the organization was renamed in 1923 to ANC. So while the organization's early period was characterized by political inertia due to power struggles and lack of resources, increasing repression and the entrenchment of the white minority, this just basically meant that the white minority was able to galvanize the party and thus further their control over the party, limiting them to actually attaining independence. Right? The ANC has had a monopoly of power for the past 2 decades, with most of the opposition parties failing to make a significant impact. And this has been the case in many other Southern African countries as well. And opposition parties have been unable to gain a foothold in the political arena. Now, this video will explore the prospects of opposition parties in Southern Africa taking power, with a focus of the case of South Africa from 2013 to 2019. It will also discuss the barriers that opposition parties have faced in the past and consider the potential for them to make successful strides in the future. Thank you. So now, it is time to conceptualize the South African political climate. So the development of democratic societies in Southern Africa is often viewed as being dependent on the existence of strong opposition political parties and efficient party structures. Countries like Zimbabwe, Namibia, and South Africa have all kept multi-party systems since gaining independence from the colonial era. And although the opposition in Zimbabwe is often silenced, they still inherit a multi-party system. Previously, one-party states in Tanzania, Zambia, Malawi, and Mozambique also now enjoy multi-party systems in place. Now we move to the dominance of the ANC in South Africa. So like I've mentioned before, the ANC is a South African political party and a black nationalist organization that spearheaded the fight against apartheid in South Africa from 1940. And the ANC was outlawed by the white South African government from 1960 to 1990, but throughout this time they still operated underground and outside South African borders. The embargo was abolished in 1990, and South Africa's first multi-ethnic administration was led by the late Nelson Mandela, who was also the president of the ANC, elected in 1994. The ANC has managed to retain power ever since, despite having a vibrant opposition. Now, the unique situation in South Africa shows the relevance of a national liberation philosophy, the appeal of liberation figures like Nelson Mandela, and the significance of ethnic and racial differences as significant influences on voting patterns. While discontent with the ANC administration has risen, as seen by the working class township protests over concerns of service delivery, loyalty to the ANC's people as the people's liberators still runs deep. Hence, the ANC still gains majority votes in each election. Notably in Southern Africa, where there is a thin border between the government and the governing party, the ruling parties, especially the dominant ones, are self-assured, strong, and have access to government resources. And due to its control over all government institutions, the ruling party enjoys a significant advantage. Now, in South Africa, there is an ongoing debate about the ANC being considered a revolutionary party in South Africa. There have been multiple exchanges between political parties in the country, especially between the ANC and the DA, which is the Democratic Alliance, and all associated political analysts. There is a general understanding that the ANC is arrogant and has enjoyed freedom from accountability, and also has ambitions in increasing their hold over the state, the society, and the economy. Now, both the ANC and DA have exaggerated their case, but while accepting that the ANC electoral and political hegemony does carry threats to democracy, it also proposes that the ability of the ANC to extend its dominance is subject to considerable limitations. Now, despite the ANC being followed by multiple scandals, they still somehow recover and have held onto power since 1994. And this just goes to show how the party has been dominant in the country. The party has gained significant popularity since 1994, with it receiving 62.65% of the votes in 1999, 66.35% of the votes in 2004, and securing nearly 70% of the votes in the next elections. Now, it is undeniable, looking at that the ANC brought changes that bettered the lives of the ordinary South Africans through their African nationalism, and social democracy ideology is better than that of most revolutionary parties across the continent. South Africa's political framework also allows for the freedom of association and opposition parties. Therefore, all the parties have accepted the results regardless of whether the opposition suffered defeats in the polls. No opposition party has openly considered the results of national elections, which is different to neighboring countries like Zimbabwe, where the 2018 election results was brought before the Constitutional Court. The political framework in South Africa has given the ANC a legitimacy that is although shaky, but able to stand since 1994. And it is undeniable that the party has worked in responding to the needs of the people and key voices in the economy. The ANC also runs on a system of patronage, with big businesses that fund them and use their resources to keep the party in power. Although the case of state capture made headlines under the Zuma regime, it is reflective of ANC leadership. The growing and functional economy that is South Africa also reduces discontent by citizens, thus they feel less a need to call for change. Now, although South Africa is affectionately known as the Rainbow Nation due to the racial diversity that exists within her borders, the majority of the country is black. And statistically, due to a census that was run in 2019, most of the citizens in South Africa were asked to categorize themselves into 5 racial demographic societies. Black South Africans made up 80.7%, white South Africans made up 7.9%, colored South Africans made up 8.8%, and Indian South Africans made up 2.6%. Looking at the racial profile of the country, the ANC already has dominance over the constituencies, and the main opposition party, the DA, is largely white and has dominated predominantly white provinces, but these still make up the minority. So it is only until recently that the emergence of the EFF has somehow started to gain and win the hearts of the black people, but they still have a long way to go as opposed to the ANC. Okay, so now that we've looked at the dominance of the ANC in Southern Africa, or in South Africa to be specific, now we will look at the foreign intervention and its impact on opposition politics before we further delve into the notion of opposition political parties and their ability to take power in South Africa. Now, there have been concerns from the international community over the democratic processes in Africa, and through aid programs for political parties, the international community has been advancing multi-party democracy. A large number of democratic foundations and organizations, including IDEA, EISA, are working on initiatives and programs to help the establishment of successful party systems and inclusive electoral systems. The UNDP, alongside groups like the NDI and the USAID, as well as a few German foundations, provide financial support to political parties that uphold fundamental democratic principles. Nonetheless, there should be a focus on aiding the opposition. Meetings have been planned at the regional and international levels to bring together the government and opposition parties so that they adopt the best international practices. However, we have to question this aid and the motive behind this aid and the formation of opposition political parties. Will opposition political parties form just to use the aid for their own personal means, or will it be to propel the voices, the grievances of the people? Now, let's look at the prospects of opposition parties taking power. Now, we must ask ourselves, in order to develop opposition unity and success, can opposition coalitions be preserved just by parties coming together as opposition members, or is something more substantial required for opposition to be more successful? Of late, the general trend has been of forming alliances within opposition parties, and these have been seen as the answer to a weak and disjointed opposition political party group. Some of them succeed, as in Mauritius, which has a history of coalition rule, but in nations like Botswana and Zimbabwe, the alliances fall apart even before being put to the test by people. Incumbent governments also play a role in strengthening the democracy in their states by creating conditions which opposition political parties feel empowered to compete more effectively. For example, party building programs and institutions that provide opposition parties with the tools necessary to engage in effective political campaign are critical in establishing the legitimacy of opposition. Now, we should look at the notions of just seizing power. Instead of just focusing on seizing power, opposition parties should actually start to democratize both their own internal institutions and society as a whole. And we have scholars like Gladstone who said, when describing the state of opposition in Africa, your business is not to govern the country, but it is if you think fit to call to account those who govern it. And perhaps this is true. If opposition parties are able to call to account those who govern the country, maybe they are headed in a better direction. But for now, they must build and dig a deeper and firmer foundation within their ethos and what they stand for before pushing forward their mantra against ruling parties. Now, to conclude, the Southern African region has displayed a history of political instability since independence, with many countries transitioning from one-party rule to multi-party systems, as well as back again. And as a result, political opposition and the development of stable democratic institutions has been a challenge for many countries in this region. However, these experiences of multi-party systems are not universal. Many of those countries in this region have yet to experience the benefits of this, and much remains to be done in order to make this happen. Now, this is just my conclusion. However, we will take it out to the people within my community to see what they think about opposition political parties actually standing a chance to take over and become the ruling parties within Africa. Stay tuned. Right, so now we've looked at the whole conceptualization of opposition political parties in Africa. We will have an interactive session with people that are just walking by just to get their perspectives on what's going on. So on my right, I have Tavonga. On my left, I have Panache. So welcome, guys. Welcome to the segment. How are you doing?
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Tavonga, how are you doing?
I'm doing well today. It's a nice sunny day.
Right, I'm glad. So shall we get going?
Sure.
Alright, so guys, do you think opposition political parties in Africa actually stand a chance of being ruling parties? I'll start with Tavonga.
I think so. It's been seen recently, the last couple of elections that have been happening in Africa. Opposition has stood a pretty decent chance, but I think they really have an uphill battle to climb because there's a lot of entitlement with these ruling parties that went through the liberation struggle, gained independence. They feel entitled to the countries, and there's such a firm grip on them that I don't think they give opposition parties much room to operate.
All right, thank you. Panache, what are your thoughts on this very same question?
Well, I would like to agree with Faneti in part, although I don't fully agree with them. They do stand a decent chance, although I don't think most of the inability to stand effectively with ruling parties in particular is because they feel entitled. They simply don't have the political will to come into power.
All right, thank you. So what measures must opposition political parties take in order to better themselves, to make themselves more competitive, or actually bring about some sort of significant change within the political arena of any African nation?
Well, first of all, I think they need to pose strong opposition in the sense that they need to have a solid foundation of their policies. I mean, the ruling party, it's a ruling party for a reason. It has been in power for most of the time, if not, in fact, it has been in party for the whole country since the country's independence. I mean, they know what they want, they know their policies, they know the agenda, but what does the opposition have to offer that can solidly move the people from the ruling party to the opposition?
Right,
I think it's a matter of vision.
All right, vision it is. And Tavonga, what do you think?
I think it's a matter of with opposition parties. I find they're a lot more popular in urban areas among the younger population, and I think they need to grow out of that shell and reach the rural areas, because Africa is largely rural, and you can have all the urban support that you need, but if you don't have that rural vote as well, if you don't appeal to the rurals as well, I don't think you're gonna get anywhere. So I think they need to just grow out of that shell and expand and just have proper manifestos. Like, they need to be clear with what they're offering onto the table, because a lot of these opposition parties, in my opinion, all they're offering is, I am not XYZ, I am not the government of the day that you're tired of. So I think if they actually offer, concrete ways forward, they might stand a chance.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.
All right, so we're back again with the whole questions and open questions section. And in this segment, we have Mutsa with us. Hi, Mutsa. How are you?
Hello. Hi, Abby.
I'm good, thank you. How are you this fine day? Thank you. So, Mutsa, do you think opposition political parties in Africa actually stand a chance in achieving the ruling party status?
I think they have to work thrice as hard. Why? They start from a very disadvantaged position. Why am I saying that? You find that the ruling party, they've got access to state resources. Not saying that these state resources should be used for campaigns, but more often than not, you find that they access those funds to run their campaigns, to appeal to the rural people, be it by offering free things, whatever the case may be. They do whatever they have to do to make sure that they speak to the large population, and they tend to target the rural population because they're not as enlightened, they're not as in touch with other things that may be going on in the country, as opposed to those who are actually in urban areas, who've had the chance to come face to face with some of the problems that political ruling parties impose. So yeah, I would say that they're at a disadvantage from their campaign strategies. Also, the ruling party has a monopoly. They're the ones in power whilst they're campaigning. Means you've got cases whereby they stop rallies, they hinder whatever the opposition is trying to do. So again, it goes back to the fact that they're so disadvantaged. And as long as that stance is not stopped, mitigated, whatever it is that they have to do to make sure that they're at an equal playing field when they begin their campaigns. It's already rigged. It's already rigged, yeah.
Understood. And what measures do you think these opposition political parties must do to better themselves, to make themselves more competitive within this political arena?
I'll go back to what I was saying. You need to make sure people know you need to have a certain monopoly over the people, over the masses, because at the end of the day, those are the people you want to appeal to, those are the votes that you want to be able to win and topple ruling parties. So yeah, until they get whatever means they need, be it funding, enough funding, more funding, to be able to campaign adequately or better than the ruling party,
They've got a whole lot of work to do.
there's a lot of work to do. It's nearly impossible. I'm not saying it. We've seen cases like Zambia, whereby Congo, where you find that ruling parties can actually be overthrown and replaced. But yeah, it's an uphill battle. They have a lot of work to do. Like I said earlier, they have to do thrice the work.
That's right. So you've heard it, folks. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.